Hey everybody, welcome to Metal Shop Steve. Today, I am very excited to have Dave Silver from Savage Messiah with us. Thank you for coming by.
Hello, nice to be here.
Well, first of all, I guess I want to just say, for those people who have seen my previous review on the album Demons, right now it's my contender for my favorite album of the year. So whatever you guys are doing, you're doing it right.
Thanks very much.
I guess let's just start out a little bit by talking about the album. Let's get right into it. So I guess if you could get into a little bit of the creative process for how this album came about, that'd be a good way to start.
Sure. So we decided we did a festival run in 2017. We played some of like the biggest shows that we'd ever played, but we sort of realized that the last album had kind of run its course, and so we decided that we needed to get back into the studio quickly to follow it up, just to keep the wheels rolling on the band. And basically I'd spent about a year just collecting very sort of small snippets of music, a riff, a song title. I like to write songs from titles because that's how I can kind of visualize the hook. I'd done it on the album before, but I'd done it a little bit too literally, and I fell into what I call the Iron Maiden trap, which is where your chorus is the title. Heaven can wait, heaven can. It's like, which is fine. Nothing against Maiden, one of my favorite bands, but we'd done that on the Hands of Fate record, and it's it's a bit juvenile. So I was conscious of that, so I wanted to step it up. And basically, we got in the studio. We had no songs. We had just a catalog of ideas, and we started. We'd already made the decision to work with a new producer, just to spice it up. Try something different, and that was cool because the unintended consequence of that was it put some pressure on the band, because especially me as a singer, because singing in front of people is actually, like, when there's a crowd of people, it's fine, but if it's just one guy sat across from you, another, you got to sing. It's sort of it's quite nerve-wracking, and with Scott Atkins, who produced all of our other records, he's a friend, very sort of long-standing relationship. I probably got a little bit complacent with the relationship, whereas in front of somebody who's never heard me sing before, I sort of, oh, bloody hell, I better be good.
All right. I guess a quick side note, I wasn't even thinking about this question, but you have what's this, 5 albums out now?
Somehow.
Do you have any interest in maybe recording a live album to put out there?
Yeah, I'd love to do it. I mean, we've not really ever had the opportunity to do it before, and also, to be honest, the live delivery of the band has always been a little, well, we've been developing the live delivery, shall I say, over a long period of time. On the last tour, I think we finally found, because heavy metal's very difficult to play live well. It's very nuanced. And a music industry person once came to see the band live and sat me down afterwards and said, your album has a lot of dynamics. The live show is a little bit like being hit over the head with a dinner tray. So I've been conscious of that for years, and trying to develop that kind of thing. And on the last tour, we went on in-ear monitors. We invested in better equipment, and lo and behold, the delivery was much better. Oh, I've just got to get the.
Well, I guess while we're on it, we can get back into the album in just a minute, but I want to keep talking about touring a little bit. So you just not that long ago finished up kind of a world tour. You were really all over the place. Is that something that you really thrive on doing?
Yes, definitely. I think touring, apart from anything, is the only way to make money anymore in this business. And why do you get into a band in the first place? It's to connect with fans, and social media is great, the internet's fantastic, but that the human connection of not only the performance, but coming out at the end of the show, meeting fans, hanging out with people. I mean, we've made loads of, like, over the years, like, good friends, and you see these people and they support you, and it's to me, that human connection is why anybody forms a band, or at least from my experience, why I formed a band. So yeah, live is 100% what it's all about.
Great. I guess for anybody who really doesn't know, how did the band come about originally?
So I had been in a local band in the Midlands. I'm from Birmingham, and I'd been sort of living in a city called Worcester, just outside Birmingham. And I'd sort of, that band had sort of imploded and whatever. And I'd made the decision that I ought to move to London because it appeared to me to be like there'd be some opportunities. So we'd made an EP, or a demo really, self-financed. But I had a friend who worked in a distribution company, and so I spoke to her about, distributing the EP or whatever. And I'd moved to London and put a lineup together and did some shows. And off the back of that EP, we got noticed by a producer called Chris Tangarides, who had done the sort of Painkiller by Judas Priest. It's obviously a seminal record, and it loads of stuff, Thin Lizzy and Bruce Dickinson. And off the back of that relationship, we got a record deal with Candlelight. And then we started tour. We did a big European tour with a band called Overkill, which was quite a big thing. But the band was not really at a kind of level to sort of take advantage of it, and we sort of petered out. But we again got really lucky, and we'd been noticed by Earache Records, who signed the band. We did 2 records for them, quite a bit of touring. We picked up tours with like I'm on a Marth and Eva had been our label mates, and then but at the same time I sort of had this parallel career where I trained as an accountant, and I was working at EMI Publishing in the music industry. And but it's funny how things had sort of come about, because like all young bands, you end up signing deals that are pretty one-sided, and you don't know you just don't know, don't understand. And if you're not lucky enough to have been surrounded by sort of people that understand the business at the start of your career, you just get yourself into a right pickle. And most bands end up in that scenario and end up just breaking up. But I was lucky because I learned the business from the inside. And then we'd kind of all the respect in the world for Earache, but we decided that the scenario was not going to work out in our interests, and so we left the label. And they were very gracious in allowing us to leave the label. I think they figured we were dead in the water as well. And but I sort of rebuilt this whole thing, and we got signed to Century Media, and we just kind of kept moving forward all the time. It's been a slow 45-degree upwards trajectory.
Oh, good. I mean, sometimes that's the way to go, I think. That way you're not overwhelmed with everything all at once, and you kind of have, like you said, that little bit of knowledge and experience built up to help you out.
Yeah, and I think the cool thing is I think bands that break on their really break on their first or second record, that must be nice, but that just comes with a whole other different set of challenges. Like, for example, how can you really be a headlining act with one album, 10 songs? You can't. Whereas, we've only just in the last 2 years started being able to do our own headline shows. And when we went to Japan to headline for the first time last January, and we got wind that the ticket price was like $70 to see the band, which is normal out there, but I felt that's insane. But because we've got this back catalogue of material, we were like, well, let's play for 2 hours then, because you don't have opening bands in Japan. It's like, well, let's give people value for money. And we felt that that's lucky that we can do that.
Okay, that's interesting. I often hear that not that it's necessarily bigger in Japan, but that metal really has kind of this stronghold over there for whatever reason, and I just think that's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose culturally speaking, the Japanese tend to be, conservative, lowercase c conservatives, and that tends to mesh the sort of ethos of, unwittingly, the ethos of heavy metal fans tends to be conservatism, in the sense that metal fans know what they like and they like what they know. And that's also why it's quite difficult as a metal band to break through, because there's a sort of I don't know if the word, if cynicism is fair to equate with conservatism. That's probably a little bit unfair. But having said that, there is a mentality among metal fans, and not going to immediately just grasp hold of your band, but in Japan, the other thing is, I can say for us in Japan, is we have a great label out there, and he's done everything right. It's very, the progression's been very linear, in the sense that he took us out, put the record out, the press liked it, So that was a good start. And then he took us out and we did the Loud Park Festival in front of like 25,000 people, which was cool, and then, he's worked it at radio. It's old school, worked it at retail, worked it at radio. And the funniest thing, right, when we went to headline Japan, so we flew out, picked up at the airport, driven to Tokyo, went for dinner with a guy, and Tetsu, his name is, he's a legend in the sort of Japanese scene. He said to me, my tactic on this tour, no promotion. And I'm like, I just got off a 12. I'm like, oh man, great tactic. But he's like, don't worry, the show's sold out. I'm like, oh, okay. But this is cool. And this shows that the mentality is, he said, Japanese metal fans, once they support your band, they will support you forever. But they don't like bands that are rammed down their throats, overly hyped. So we do these shows and we don't promote them. And I mean, they were like 300 caps, but only the hardcore fans will turn up. And in essence, what you're doing is you're giving them something of value, which is the memory of having seen you in a tiny club. So next, we're going back in October and we're doing like a 700 cap. So there's already more promotion. But I think that's super cool, and the UK, it's a trend driven market. I think America's the same. I mean, we struggle in America, but, the bands that tend to break, come to at least come to people's understanding are the bands that are rammed down people's throats. Unfortunately, in my estimation.
No, I think that's definitely true to some extent. The bands that get a lot of promotion aren't necessarily the best bands out there, even no knock on them, as a whole. But I think when people get used to hearing a band live and seeing them work hard, that kind of draws people in, I think, because there's more of maybe a sincerity to the band and the music that way.
Totally. Yeah. Integrity. I mean, that's key. And, if you look at a lot of the sort of the old school sort of heavy hitting bands like Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, Metallica, and whatever, there's a real integrity in what they do. And I think that's why they've had the longevity that they've had. And, you could get into arguments or, career arches and whatnot, but just basically in the core essence of what makes those bands great, I think it's integrity.
Good. Okay, so we kind of detoured. That's probably my fault, but let's get back into Demons a little bit here. So what I like about it, and part of what I do with my channel, is I get to explore and find new music, and I love that because just as a metal fan, it's really a joy. But too many times I hear things that sound the same.
Right.
And the thing I picked up right away, I think The Bitter Truth is probably what got me into you guys. And you had this sound that was familiar but unique, I think is the best way to talk about it. Is that something, I don't know if a sound could be intentional, but is that sort of the way that you've crafted it, or is it just you started playing music and that's how it came out?
Pretty much. And I think especially if you listen to some of our earlier records, they're a lot more sort of derivative. But it's that old school approach is basically, we're heavy metal fans and we try and make music that as heavy metal fans we would like. And so you just end up essentially regurgitating your influences. But I suppose if you have a wide range of influences, I think it was Phil Anselmo said this, that if you rip off 10 different bands, you inevitably stumble upon something that has its own, integrity. If you just rip off 2 bands, it's like, for example, the band Greta Van Fleet, who's a little bit controversial, doing very, very well by all accounts, but they sound like Led Zeppelin. That's what they sound like. It's, I'm not knocking them, but that's what they sound like. That's their USP, is they sound like Led Zeppelin. But that's not that unique a selling point, whereas, I prefer bands that just take influences from across the spectrum. And somebody once said that we're like Bon Jovi and Metallica meets Avenged Sevenfold, and I thought that's great because it's 3 bands that you could never, that's random, right? So I thought that was cool, and that's certainly what we try and do.
I always think, and I've talked about this with other people too, I think the difference between a really great band and just kind of a band that's pushing along is the one that's just pushing along, they're trying to sound like someone else. But the bands that are really rising above are the ones you can hear the influence, but they are their own band. And I think that's definitely what I get with you guys.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, originality is very, very, very difficult. especially in a genre that's now been around for 50 years, and it's easy to become cynical and that everything's been done before and whatnot. But I think if you just you play from your heart, and as a fan, you have a barometer of good and bad, and try and stick to what you think is good. Maybe other people will enjoy it. Obviously, that's worked with you, so that's cool, man. I'm pleased.
So not totally, I wouldn't categorize you as a thrash band, but certainly there are thrash elements in there. Is that something that you were kind of eating up in your earlier days?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, I've always had super like broad taste. I mean, my dad's a rock metal fan. I grew up being indoctrinated, with his record collection. But the thrash stuff, I mean, for me, it comes from Metallica, because I just liked Metallica. I'm not really like a thrash elitist. I own probably some underground thrash records, but it's not really my go-to. I'm more of like a rock fan personally. We kind of there was a resurgence in thrash in about 2008, 9, 10. That's when we were sort of coming out, and when we got signed, so we were lumped in with that. And that's actually kind of not been that good for the band, because, well, I find that's quite interesting. People tend to, the way that they analyze music is sort of backwards. And what I mean is, like, I think music really, for the listener, it should be a binary. It should be, do I like it? Yes or no. Do I think it's good? Yes or no. And the problem is, nowadays, is people seem to build up. So, for example, if the media, like a magazine, says thrash metal band, and you're a thrash metal guy, you've built up in your mind this sort of, hierarchy of what constitutes thrash metal. And so when you approach a band, you kind of, you're comparing them against this sort of like checklist of things that you have in your mind. And so for a band like us, it's an element of it, but we also do loads of other kind of stuff. And what's happened with thrash fans is that it's like, well, this is bad thrash, rather than like, oh, this is cool. There's a bit of thrash, but also some metal, and whatever, So yeah, I'm kind of like, I don't like to get too bogged down with the arbitrary classification of music, because I think it's pointless. Either you like it, yes or no. And if you like it, great. And if you don't, great, no problem, because there's tons of bands out there.
I agree. Usually when I do my videos, I end up getting into that same sort of thing. I find myself, trying to qualify, not qualifying. Like, don't put these people in a category, because that's unfair to everybody, and you might be missing out that way. So totally agree. I think if you like rock, if you like metal, you've got to be willing to kind of try a bunch of different plates out there, I think.
Yeah, and again, it does have a utility to say, oh, these guys play a bit of thrash, or that's a death metal band. That does have a utility, because it's a filter for people. So it's not like it's not like we shouldn't have genre classifications, but it shouldn't be that I self-identify as a thrash fan, so therefore I like this, and that doesn't have that, so I'm not into that. It's sort of, I think people should be a bit more open-minded, I guess.
So let's talk then, I guess, about some more of the songs on the Demons album. I guess from a songwriting perspective, from a lyrical perspective, what's driving some of the songwriting here?
So again, I was on previous records, I would basically not write the lyrics until 5 minutes before I had to sing them. I'd have a vague kind of idea about, this song might be about that. But on this album, I really wanted to actually, try. So I'd gotten into reading books. I'd had this reading list forever of sort of things that I felt that I ought to have read and hadn't read. And it really started with George Orwell. And I read all of his books apart from A Clergyman's Daughter, which I hadn't read because the download version I had, I didn't like the text, the size of the text. But I read all of his stuff and just really liked it. There was this kind of, old-fashioned Englishness to it, which is kind of gone. It doesn't exist. And I was so connected with that. And so I kind of, in a sense, wanted to put those sorts of themes into the record as best as I could, and that's kind of what I did. So we went to the studio and did the drums and stuff. And then we got bounces, which were like essentially demos. And I would sit up late at night and just write the lyrics and then go back to them the next day and sort of rewrite them and, you know, change bits. But it ended up being that I was really prepared in the studio. And I got really interested in the history of the Soviet Union at one point. Probably through the works of Alexander Solzhenitsyn or Solzhenitsyn. I can't say it very well. And I read Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment, and actually the title of the book comes from a title of the record comes from Dostoevsky. He wrote a book called Demons, sometimes called The Devils, which became really apparent to me about the things that led to the Russian Revolution had been sown in the Russian psyche for at least 100 years before, you know, the abdication of the Tsar and whatever, the October Revolution and all the rest of it. And I just, you know, I don't know why, I just found it interesting. And, you know, sometimes that's just like, it's a moment in time, you know, write about that. Why not?
You know, it's very interesting that you say that. And I knew there was something subconscious that made me love your record. I'm a big fan of the classical Russian writers myself.
Excellent.
I have Demons. I have kind of the collected works of all the Russian greats. So something about that grabbed me, and I guess there was my subconscious connection to the record, maybe.
No, fantastic.
Yeah. Another song on the album was you actually did a cover of Parachute, which I'm not a country music fan necessarily, and I didn't recognize it as a country song, which I think maybe is the best way to do a cover. So what, did you hear the song and say, hey, I really want to cover that? Or did it just kind of coming out about organically?
Well, I heard the song and actually thought, oh, I really like those chords. Let's just nick them and write our own song using those chords. But then as I started trying to do that, I thought, you know what, why don't we just cover it? Because, you know, metal has a great tradition of, you know, particular bands like obviously Judas Priest doing it to great effect. And I thought, actually, that's quite a nice thing in keeping with the spirit of the band. And again, if you're going to cover a song, do a song that, you know, you can then turn it into your own song. And that was all that was about, really, was trying to do something a little bit different. And again, it just, you know, not like in a contrived sense, but because, you know, you're always trying to regurgitate your influences and just showing a different side of the band. Hey, look, we can do this as well if we want to. I suppose it's another sort of Judas Priest kind of influence, because one of the things that I've always loved about them is they don't tend to make the same record. And if you look at their heyday, it's like every album is so unique. So it was just something that I thought, take a chance, why not? And people seem to like it, so cool.
Yeah, I think it came out really well. Like I said, to me, when I first listened to it, I just assumed it was one of your songs because it sounded like Savage Messiah. And so I did go back and check out the country. Yeah, I checked it out. I like the guy's voice, Chris Stapleton, I believe. I think he has a great voice, and not necessarily going to convert me to a country fan, but at least that song I can appreciate for sure.
Yeah, he's cool, and his story's cool as well. You know, he was a songwriter for years and had a lot of success just writing songs for other people, and then put out a record of his own, and it sort of bombed. But one of the people he'd written for was Justin Timberlake, and pulled him up at the Country Music Awards, and like overnight blew up. And it's cool.
Wow. Yeah, you just never know how things are going to work out. So in terms of the singles, I guess you call them, that you've released off of Demons, is that something that you kind of get a say in, or does the record label pick which songs? I mean, because what do we have? Bitter Truth, Down and Out have both been released as videos. Yeah, so is that something you kind of have a say in, or complete say?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, Century Media are pretty good at allowing the artists to kind of do what they want. I mean, you know, they gave us feedback, but it was, yeah, they were more or less in agreement with us as well. We wanted to kind of, with the singles, kind of show, because we'd wanted to make a heavier record than the last record. The album before, we'd kind of gotten a little bit off the beaten track because we decided it couldn't be a thrash record at all. And then the result was like a little bit mixed, and some of the older fans were a bit meh. about it. So we were okay, well, we better make a heavier record. And so to kind of excite people about it, it was like, well, let's show them the really heavy stuff that we've done on this album first. Which is that was the thought process.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking down the track list right now, and again, I said it when I did the album review. There's not really any song on here that I can pick out that I would ever skip when I'm listening to it. This is a disc that I kind of go straight through. Yeah. So I guess just coming off of your world tour and putting out an album, that's a lot of stuff. That's a lot of work, right? The end of last year, the beginning of this year. But what do you see ahead in the next, I guess for the next half of this year anyway?
So we're doing some festivals over the summer, and we're trying to basically just line up another support tour for Europe. We're going to Japan, headlining in Japan. We were looking at Southeast Asia, but it was kind of hinged upon China, and the month that we need to be there, Western Act, it's the 70th anniversary of something to do with the Communist Party, and they've banned Western acts from performing. So kind of you win some, you lose, and then that kind of messed the whole thing up because we were going to go to Australia, but we're not going to do that now, I don't think. But just look for opportunities and kind of see what comes up. We've got some more shows that we just confirmed in Germany. Germany's like starting to happen for us, which is a really important market leading into next year. And we're already talking we're going to try and do like a package tour, so it won't be a support tour and it won't technically be a headline, but it'll be like a co-headline with another band in a sort of similar position to ourselves. So that's what we're talking about doing, and see what else comes out. Hopefully next year we're already starting to get offers for festivals for next year, which is cool. So we want to try and do as many European festivals next year as possible, and see where it lands.
Any chance that I'll get to see you here in the U.S. at any point in the near future?
I mean, I'd love to say yes. I mean, we've tried in America many times, but it's just never really worked out for us. I mean, we don't actually have a record deal in America at the moment. Whatever it is about the band and the not necessarily American fans, because we played at Prog Power USA, went down. I mean, we actually sold a ridiculous amount of T-shirts at that show, which was encouraging. But it's the sort of the music industry people don't seem to think that we're up to it, which you can't change that. There are a very small percentage of people that have set themselves up as the arbiters of taste, for a very, very large country. But I understand, because to bring a band like ourselves over to America requires a lot of investment, and the scene in America is difficult. And we've had things, I've been out in LA and met with people, and I remember once I was out and there was an agent, and we'd had sort of we'd sat down and gone, right, okay, and the last thing before I got on the flight was a text from him saying, really looking forward to this, think this is going to be great for both of us. And I thought, oh, wicked, what I went there to do, I've done. And as soon as I got back to Europe, I didn't hear anything, and I emailed, and it was like it went cold. And you're like, what can you do?
Yeah.
We had another agent that was started saying, well, I've got this tour and I've got that tour, and it goes nowhere. And you go, well, maybe American business people are flaky. I don't know. It is what it is. I would love to be popular in America. I would love to tour. I believe there's an audience there. Nobody else seems to believe there is an audience for us. I believe there is. Maybe one day we will be able to. I'll be vindicated, but our focus is on Europe right now, because if we get a lot more popular in Europe, I mean, we can headline in the UK, but we can't headline in, for example, Germany, France, and those are important markets. So we get more popular in Europe, And again, it's not unreasonable of a booking agent in America to say, well, how many tickets are you going to sell in, like, Boise, Idaho, or whatever it is? Well, I don't know. Probably not many, right?
I've been to Boise, and I think you're right.
But yeah, it's just it's a reality of the music business. There's not, because the scene is a little bit stagnant. There's not like this whole wave of English heavy metal bands doing great business. I even look, some of the classic bands aren't selling anywhere near the amount of tickets they used to sell. It is what it is.
Yeah. Well,
just keep plugging away, and I'm doing my part to to spread
I
the word.
appreciate it, and it's so interesting because I've had like some weird things. I was in San Francisco once, and I just so happened I was wearing a Savage Messiah T-shirt, and it was on Lombard Avenue. I always remember it. And I was walking. I was actually with my girlfriend, and we were actually having an argument. We were bickering because she was tired and she didn't want to walk anymore, and I didn't want to take a bus because I'm like, I don't know buses in San Francisco. Like, let's just walk. And as I'm crossing the road, there's a metalhead walking towards me, and I was wearing an Insurrection Rising T-shirt, and he went, "Nice T-shirt, man. Messiah rules." And I was like, "Cool, fame at last." He didn't know I was in the band, but he knew the band, so I thought that's cool. But like I say, it's just the music industry is about collecting yeses, and we haven't collected enough yeses in America for it to materialize into a nationwide tour. If it happens, it happens.
Understand. Let me go ahead and get you out of here on a couple of nice, easy questions, some fun stuff.
Cool.
One of them you more or less answered. I like to ask, is there a song that you wish you had written or wish you had recorded?
Oh, so many. So many. That Was Yesterday by Foreigner. I think that'd be a good one. Bed of Roses. I mean, if I'd written that, I'd be happy. And I'm not talking like commercial success. I'm just talking about like the songs. I think they're amazing songs. The Unforgiven by Metallica, I think, is an incredibly well written song. But yeah, just so many. And I've tried to rewrite them. So in a sense,
All right. Last question. What are you listening to right now yourself?
Oh, what was I listening to? Van Halen, actually. And well, I'm a Van Hagar fan.
Okay.
I hold the belief that if you prefer David Lee Roth era Van Halen to the Sammy Hagar era, then you are musically you do not have an adept ear musically. Because I like the DLR. Well, I like the first record. That's untouchable, but the rest of it's a bit patchy. Like 1984, there's 3 good songs on it. Let's be honest. The Van Hagar stuff, I don't know. I just think it's brilliant. I think Sammy focused them. Songs are good. There's a lot of love songs, but I don't mind that. That's fine. And yeah, I just think For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge is an amazing record. It's a fantastic record. So I am a Van Hagar guy.
Completely agree. I saw them a few years back after they had flip-flopped back to Dave, and then they brought Sammy back. I saw him on the first show of that tour when he came back, and he killed it. He killed all the songs, all the Dave stuff. Just an awesome show. Yeah.
Totally. And what else? I've been learning a bit of classical guitar. So I was listening to like Chopin, but played like classical guitar. Today I was listening to Bruce Springsteen because we had this hilarious review that said that they'd seen us in Paris and said the singer has a good voice but sounds a lot like Bruce Springsteen. I'm like, what? Amazing,
I don't believe I've ever heard that Springsteen record.
Yeah, and maybe he meant Dickinson. I have been compared to Bruce Dickinson before, which is fantastic, one of my all-time favorites. But yeah, Bruce Springsteen. Go figure. Okay. I'll take it.
Yeah. All right, Dave. Well, thanks so much for coming by today, man. I really enjoyed it, and I love the record. If I ever get over to Europe and am able to chase you guys down at a show, I'll definitely do that.
Awesome. And hey, you never know. We might make it back to America for more than one show eventually.
I would love that too. All right. Thanks again for coming by. Savage Messiah, everybody, go get this record right now. And thank you again.
Cheers.
All right.
See you soon. Take care.